Welcome back, my 150 students, Applied Calculus. We just finished number 10 on 5.1. We're doing anti-differentiation or integration. And we're getting ready to do number 11. You ready for this? A satellite radio station is launching an aggressive advertising campaign in order to increase the number of daily listeners. The station currently has 27,000 daily listeners, and management expects the number of daily listeners to grow at a rate of, that's the derivative, and it's written s prime of t or ds dt, and it's equal to 60 t to the 1/2. So we're given the derivative this time. And notice it's listeners per day because S apparently means listeners, T is day, so this will be listeners per day, where T is the number of days since the campaign began. How long should the campaign last if the station wants the number of daily listeners to be 41,000? So we've got a lot of interpretation to do here. First of all, they gave us this, and it's listeners per day. I wrote down that T is day and S is listeners. And the question is, when will there be 41,000 listeners? So we have to interpret this like this. And I need S. I don't have S, I have S prime. And I know that S of t is the antiderivative or the integral of S prime of t dt. So I'm going to integrate 60t to the 1/2 dt. And notice I went on ahead and, I guess it was given as a 1/2. They could have said square root of t. And I'm just going to use the power rule here. So the power rule, the 60 is a constant, and then I just add 1 to the power. And then I have this plus c. So when I add 1 to the power, 1/2 gives me 3/2. So I get 60 times t to the 3/2 over 3/2 plus c. Now 60 divided by 3/2, you can put that in your calculator, will give you a 40. So this is my function with a plus c. So I don't know what the c is, but I've got information that we started with 27,000 listeners today. So we started the campaign with 27,000, and we want to know when we're going to have 41,000. So what that interprets, again, more interpretation, S of 0 is 27,000. So what I'm going to do is plug in a 0. So S of 0 is 40 times 0 to the 3/2 plus c equals 27,000. So I'm just plugging that all in. And then I'm going to solve for c, and I get 27,000. And that's going to give me exactly what my c is. Instead of just any c, it's 27,000. So my S of t is 40t to the 3/2 plus 27,000. So it was a little bit of work, but we can find the number of listeners. So this is the function that has to do with the number of listeners after so many days. And the last thing we were asked to find, not only do we have to find that, it asks, t equals what when S is 41,000? Aha. So really, we're given 41,000 here, so I have to solve this. Okay, I gotta solve for t. So what do? You have to subtract 27,000 from both sides. That t to the 3/2, we'll get to it. First, divide by 40, and get your calculator out. You can pause this at any time. 14,000 divided by 40 should be 350. Now this you don't come across every day. A t to the 3/2 power. If I'm trying to get rid of this 3/2 power, the easiest thing to do, ready, is this. So if I power this to the reciprocal of that, these add up, you multiply them. You multiply exponents. So if you have a to the m to the n, that's a to the m times n from our exponent rules. So if I multiply those, that gives me a 1. So notice that I flipped that, and you must do it to both sides. So I took both sides to the 2/3 power. So I just went into my calculator, and I put 350 to the 2/3 power, and this gives me 3/2 times 2/3 is a 1. So there's your t right there, 49.7. So I wrote, the campaign should last 49.7, probably about 50 days, if the station wants 41,000 listeners. All right, I'll be back for number 12.